Dating is all around and so are couples on the streets. How much do Korean couples spend in meeting and dating their lovers? Korea reaches its 11th free trade agreement. What is the meaning and significance of the latest FTA on the global stage? We can travel to Russia from Seoul without having to transfer the train? What is the core principle of high-speed bogies that don't need to change wheels when the track width changes? Smartphone unlocking methods are evolving. Competition to unlock smartphones by companies are getting fiercer for security and protection of privacy. North Korea's leadership reshuffle is revealed by the latest Supreme People's Assembly. Who has emerged as the second most influential man in the North after the execution of Chang Song-taek?
Hello, I'm Andrew Salmon and welcome to Bizline, where we begin today's show with the business of love. Now, I'm standing in Gwanghwamun Plaza, the very heart of Seoul, and it's a place where young hearts are beating furiously because spring has sprung, the dating season is underway, and everywhere you look you can see young couples gazing longingly into each other's eyes. How lovely. But what is the economics of all this romantic activity? What do Korean couples actually do when they're dating? How much money do they spend? And what do they spend it on?
Anywhere you go in the world, you can easily spot couples out on a date. Although what people do on a date differs, whatever they do, they have to spend money. Then how much do you think Koreans spend when they go out on a date? They are university students on a date during a weekday after class. One thing they never miss on a date is enjoying a good meal together. Because they can meet during the daytime, they can take advantage of inexpensive lunch deals. For the meal and coffee, they pay about $27. After the meal, they headed to a nearby park. They like to walk when the weather is good.
남자친구가 여유가 있을 때는 남자친구가 데이트 비용을 부담을 하고 아니면은 제가 여유가 있을 때는 제가 부담을 하는 편인데 그렇게 되면은 한 번 만날 때 한 3만 원? 많이 써봐야 4만 원?
용돈을 해서 사지하는 비용하며 한 50%? 하나 반 정도인 것 같아요.
A survey conducted by an online recruitment company said that university students mostly spend between $95 and $190 in a month, while 26.3% of the respondents spend between $190 and $286. University students who do not have a steady income feel burdened with expenditure on dates and said they took part-time jobs.
용돈을 받는다기보다는 보통 둘 다 아르바이트를 해서 이제 그 용돈을 버는데 서로 만나기 전에 우리 오늘은 이만큼만 딱 쓰자 해서 미리 돈을 걷어서 이제 데이트를 하는 식으로 하고 있어요.
Then how much do adults with full-time jobs spend on their date? We went along with a couple, Chang Mi-ran and Im Hyo-jin, on a date on Sunday to find out. Their date usually begins with lunch, which they spent around $33 on the day. After the meal, they went to see a movie, which they spent about $20 to purchase tickets. Then they drank coffee at a coffee shop, which cost them around $10. Their last stop was at a restaurant to have a nice dinner and drinks. They spent around $120 in total for a typical day out together.
보통 데이트 비용으로 30만 원에서 40만 원 정도는 한 달에 소비하고 있어요. 이제 한 달 월급으로 봤을 때 한 20% 정도는 데이트 비용으로 소비하고 있는 것 같아요.
Another survey shows that adults with full-time jobs spend around $70 on a date and about $220 in total for 1 month. They tend to spend more during weekends than weekdays.
주중에는 아무래도 일 끝나고 만나기 때문에 비용이 그렇게 시간적으로 이렇게 비용이 많이 안 나오는데 이제 이제 주말에 만날 때는 거의 이제 점심이나 아니면 그 전부터 만나기 때문에 이게 시간이 길어질수록 비용이 좀 더 확실히 많이 나오는 것 같아요.
Have you ever wondered which season compels people to spend the most on dates? A survey shows that people spend about 20% more towards the year end than other times of the year.
근데 아무래도 이제 그 심리적으로 이렇게 좀 날씨 영향도 좀 받아가지고 여름보다는 가을이 좀 이렇게 스산해지고 추워지면 누군가를 찾게 되잖아요. 특히 이제 결혼 정년기에 있는 20, 30대 남녀 같은 경우에는 바로 이제 그 이성에 대한 관심도 많다 보니까 자연스럽게 연말에 그런 이벤트도 많고 그런 니즈도 생기고 그래서 뭐 자연스럽게 좀 많아지는 것 같습니다.
It is also the month when people tend to open up their wallets because of many attractions and events to accommodate people out on a date. Businesses introduce products to target these people amid times of economic difficulties.
그런 이벤트나 생일은 자주 있는 건 아니니까 가끔씩 그렇게 많이 써도 크게 부담되진 않는 것 같아요.
The first quarter of the year is most popular amongst the couples because there's Valentine's Day in February and there's White Day promotions in March. These two promotion seasons make the most sales at Ticketmonster after Christmas promotions and New Year's and Chuseok promotions. So these two promotions are very important to the sales at Ticketmonster at the moment. So there are many social commerce brands in Korea and all those brands are getting very aggressive to get those deals, to get those hotel deals and restaurant deals and sell them in their sites.
Then, is there any difference in how much people spend on a date according to their income status? A market research firm says that there is not much difference in people in their early 20s to 40s.
소득에 대비해서 비례하거나 그러진 않았습니다. 그러니까 일반적으로 쓰는 그 돈의 양이 소득이 많아도 고정적인 이벤트가 대충 다 비슷하기 때문에 아마 그러지 않았나. 데이트라는 건 결국 이제 어떤 경험을 사는 거기 때문에 커플이 어떤 경험을 하는 건가에 따라서 비용 수준이 달라질 텐데 그 경험의 내용이 대충 비슷하기 때문에 쓰는 비용 패턴도 비슷한 거죠.
Regardless of culture and era, people in love spend money. Therefore, businesses will continue to work on marketing strategies to make them spend, and the competition will get fierce to grab their attention.
Good news! Korea is a trade-centric economy. Canberra and Seoul have just recently inked an FTA, or Free Trade Agreement, linking two economies together. And this year marks the 10th anniversary of Korea's first ever FTA with Chile. In the years between then and now, Korea has pursued and signed a whole range of similar agreements with partners including the EU and the US. But how successful have these deals been in actual implementation? Have the often virulent opposition voices to these deals been silenced for good, or are they simply in hibernation? And with so many countries pursuing so many bilateral FTAs, what is the future for multilateral and international free trade? These are some of the questions we have for our guest today. He's a former Minister of Trade and a current academic at the prestigious Seoul National University. Professor Park Taeho, welcome back to Bizline.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, it's a pleasure to have you on. Let's move straight ahead with the latest news. Australia. Australia, Korea have now inked or signed an FTA. Let's talk about how important this is. What are the big potentialities for this deal?
Well, both countries started these negotiations like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And when I was working for the government, I met many times with the Australian Trade Minister. But we had one little problem between the two. When we implement the so-called Korea-US FTA, one issue became very sensitive, which was, we have many issues, but the ISD, Investor-State Disputes Clause.
Right.
We include this in the Korea's FTA, but Australia doesn't want to include this because at that time the ruling party, the government, their policy stance is not to include ISD because of its own economic situation. So, you know, we almost done everything, but because of that one item, we couldn't complete.
Yeah. So how was that obstacle overcome?
Well, Australia, their government has been changed. So new
okay.
government's policy stance.
New policy, yeah.
To include, you know, it's okay to include ISD. So we speed up negotiations, and we concluded it should be implemented soon after the ratification of our National Assembly.
How long do you, I mean, often this ratification process takes years.
Maybe, I think within a year. I mean,
okay.
By the end of this year, I think this recently concluded FTA will be starting to be, you know, effectuated. Yeah.
Okay.
But as you know, Australia is a big country, number
physically,
12th and 13th largest economy in the world. But the both-way trade is only $30 billion. I think we have more potential to expand our bilateral trade. Especially, we are very much complementary to each other. Yeah. We are importing kind of primary products
raw
like
materials,
iron ore, you know, zinc ore, and aluminum, you know, kind of things, and on coal. And we are exporting manufacturing goods, autos, and petrochemical products. So I think this kind of complementarity will provide much better opportunity for both countries.
Okay. Yeah. So a good deal.
Yeah.
Okay. Many nations are in the bilateral or also regional FTA game, which means they're putting a lot of their diplomatic and trade resources into these specific negotiations. But what's happening to the global trade negotiations, the WTO's Doha Development Agenda, which seems to me to be almost dead in the water?
Well, in fact, we survived a little bit last December.
Yeah.
In Bali, the ministers met there, and we barely made one small package, finally, in 12 or 13 years. So through that, we can claim that the WTO is still alive.
Still relevant.
And produce some results. But we have also another side of the story. Even though we agreed upon a small package, which include mainly trade facilitation and some agricultural issues and some issues for developing countries. But trade facilitation is a very important issue. That means the
sensitive issue.
Yeah, customs procedures will be modernized. But even for that small package, we don't know yet whether we have a legally binding kind of agreement or not. This will be done by July this year. So, and then what about after the Bali package? What should we do for next? Remaining things? So lots of uncertainty remains. And you know, the geopolitics or negotiation structure at the WTO among major 5 countries, for example, US, EU, and then Brazil, India, China. Very, very difficult to agree upon anything.
On anything.
Yeah, so that's why many parts of the world are going for more bilateral FTAs, but more recently regional FTAs.
Right, we'll come to that in a moment. Still, going back to the DDA, the Doha Development Agenda, is this deal going to be done in our lifetimes?
Well, of course in our lifetimes.
Are you sure?
But you know, sooner or later, they have to make a very critical decision. They means all the members.
What's that decision?
For me, one option will be, let's forget about the original agenda, and then we rethink the original agenda should be revised into the new one to reflect the current real world. Okay. And then we begin another negotiations. But
so start again.
If you stick to the old agenda, very, very gloomy prospect. Yeah.
Okay. We've talked about bilateral FTAs, we've talked about the WTO talks. Let's move to another area of free trade. There seems to be a move now in many countries towards sort of regional FTAs. We already have regional trade blocks, but regional FTAs. Now, where does Korea stand at this moment on the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership?
Right now, in the world, there are 3 movements in terms of RTA.
Okay.
We call them mega RTAs. Between US and EU, they are doing it. And the TPP, which is Trans-Pacific, and ASEAN in East Asia itself, we are doing the same thing. ASEAN plus Korea, China, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and India. But regarding TPP, if you look at the participating countries, right now 12 countries, Korea with them either have already FTA or we are in the process of negotiating it. 10 of them.
Yeah.
With 10 of them.
The two would be what?
Japan and Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at TPP, so far Korea want to have a FTA to secure our export market.
Yeah.
But TPP doesn't give us much larger export market, additional export market, because we already have FTAs.
Yeah. So what's the rationale behind this?
But joining the TPP make our companies much more flexible in terms of businesses. In other words, if you want to utilize Korea-US FTA, you must produce almost everything in Korea. But if you join the TPP, if you want to export, you go to Vietnam, you use the Malaysian products, all kind of mixture. Still, you can go to a U.S. market without a tariff.
Gotcha.
Much more strategically flexible.
Gotcha.
For businesses.
Okay. And Korea, again, when do you expect this deal to be signed and stamped?
That's the very, very important question, because lots of things are going on.
Yeah.
Nothing has been concluded, including RTAs. Yeah. So we expect the TPP runs very fast, but apparently it has some problem too. So the criteria you have to look at it is President Obama's visit to Asia, especially Japan, whether they can iron out the differences between Japan and United States.
Is that the key stumbling block?
Yes, because among 12 countries, Japan is the largest country there.
Yeah.
So TPP, in a way, is a US and Japan kind of bilateral deal.
Yeah.
So we have to wait and see.
Okay, so for Washington and Tokyo, this is a de facto bilateral FTA as well as a...
That's the Korean perspective.
Yeah. Okay. Let's look back on some of the FTAs you've had. Now, from what I can see, Korea's first ever FTA with Chile, 2004. I believe there are now 11 FTAs signed and sealed. And these are all at various different stages of execution and implementation. How satisfied are you with these deals? Have they delivered on their promise?
Well, in fact, Korea-Chile FTA, that's exactly 10 years old now.
Right.
And we have a pretty positive results. I mean, it grew, the bilateral trade expanded more than almost 5 times during the 10-year period. But who is gaining, who is losing, you cannot actually tell. I mean, we export more, we also import more, about the same amount. So I think that make
that's a win-win then.
Yeah. That made a good contribution to the Korean economy. But bilateral trade is almost like $7 billion. So it's not a big one. Not a big one. But Korea-US, Korea-EU, it just started, only 2 years old or 2.5 years old. But Korea-EU, we are importing more, so EU is happy. And Korea-US, we are exporting more, we are happy.
Gotcha.
But you cannot say this is good only for Korea or only for United States. It's each country should gain and lose in every year. But overall, I think we are expanding more business opportunities.
I mean, isn't that the key metric? Just expansion of trade, regardless of who's got a slightly larger surplus or deficit.
That's not really key. I mean, we are expanding. We means both of them. And also because of that, new businesses created by small and medium-sized companies, and new investment opportunities are open. So I think they are becoming closer to each other. That's the whole thing you should look at it.
Looking back at the last 50 or so years, the last half century, Korea's been very successful as a trading nation. Times change, the world changes, Korea's industrial profile is changing. Can Korea stick to the strategies it's used thus far, extremely successfully, or does Korea need some new paradigm to accelerate its trade in the 21st century?
Without research and development, without innovation, without the creative economy, this current economy, current government is mentioning. So without that, without increasing productivity through new technology and new kind of research and development, we cannot continue to make economic growth. Of course, Korean domestic market is limited. It's only $1 trillion. So we need the outside market to grow. But to do that, you have to utilize at the maximum so-called global value chain. We want to be part of the global value chain. Otherwise, you cannot make economic development further. So global value chain means trading goods, services, investment, intellectual property right protections. Everything should be in nice combination. So without...
is that combination currently, is it out of whack? Is it skewed?
I don't think we have that good combination yet, especially in terms of service sector.
Right.
We have a very low productivity and investment climate, much more regulations, not much FDI is coming.
Right.
So without, the small and medium-sized firms become global company to be part of the global value chain, or without the FDI inflow from advanced country into Korea, we cannot create any more jobs or any more growth momentum.
That's a nice big picture analysis of the situation and challenges facing the Korean economy. Well, let's go to specifics. What does Korea need to do to continue to boost, to continue to accelerate trade in order to generate continued domestic growth?
First of all, it depends on the world economic situation.
Of course.
But I think Korea, we have so far 9 FTAs.
Yeah.
If we have a success in concluding FTA with China, Korea will be well connected with all important parts of the world. That means our small and medium-sized companies should utilize these FTAs. So far, large companies are utilizing FTAs. So FTA create new opportunity for trade, especially for small and medium-sized companies. This is a very important aspect. And then Korea become much more attractive country because we are well connected. So we can invite foreign investment into Korea. Then they can create very good jobs. I think that this kind of thing is very, very important. So I don't want to say many things, 2 things. We have to help our small and medium-sized companies so that they can become global companies. So to be part of the global value chain, and many advanced firms from US, Europe, and Japan, they have to come to Korea to utilize our FTA network. This is one of the good strategies Korean government can push.
Gotcha. In the past, I've been living here for some 13 years now, there's always been a bit of a backlash in Korea against imports, against foreign direct investment, and so on and so forth. This seems to be dying out. And of course, Korea, as we mentioned just now, has been greatly enriched by global trade. In terms of the overall global trade environment, is South Korea a strong pro-trade voice?
I think definitely we should be. We have no other choice because we are, as I said, we are a small country in terms of domestic market. If you are united, maybe it's a big jackpot,
Boost,
kind of things. But with that kind of limited domestic market, I think pro-trade stance should be inevitable.
Korea has no choice but to globalize.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Professor Ayu, it's been a pleasure having you on Bizline. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes.
We can enjoy cute games while making donations to protect the environment. A good app that can donate a tree where trees are desperately needed and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. This week's App of the Week is Tree Planet. First, you choose the location you want to donate the tree and the type of trees to donate. Then, you name the tree. Now, you can just enjoy the game that enables you to raise a baby tree. As if actually raising a baby, you bathe it, put it to sleep, and keep it safe from danger. As you nurse the baby tree with all your heart, it grows in stages. If it reaches stage 7, then a real tree is delivered to the support area. You can check the tree you donated through a virtual forest. With the tree donating app, you can also become an environmentalist.
Let's talk trains. Now, even today, many countries still use different standards, different gauges for their railroad tracks. And this causes a problem in today's globalized world, because when a train wants to cross a national frontier, it may need to change the gauge, and this is problematic and time-consuming. Korea, however, has come up with a solution. What it is a kind of undercarriage that fits underneath a train, which allows a train to traverse any kind of track, regardless of its width. How does this work? Let's take a look.
Would it be possible for a high-speed train from Korea to travel all the way to Europe? Yes, it is definitely possible with the gauge-changeable high-speed bogie system made with Korean technology. Let's take a look at the technology that can give a green light to Eurasia Railway network. The Korea Railroad Research Institute has recently developed gauge-changeable bogie system, which enables trains to run on any railroad regardless of the gauge size. So what is a bogie? It is framework carrying wheels attached to a vehicle. It plays a crucial role in moving trains effectively.
열차에서는 그 길이가 20 또는 30m 정도로 길기 때문에 직선 주행할 때와 그다음에 곡선 주행할 때 원활하게 돌기 위해서는 그 바퀴축 한 쌍이 그 장치에 그 물려 있어야 되는데요. 그게 대차라고 하는 거고 그 두 개의 대차 위에 차체가 얹혀져서 원활하게 직선과 곡선을 다 주행할 수가 있습니다.
Until now, trains could run only on single gauge systems unless there was a change in the bogie. Korea, China and Europe use a standard gauge system of 1,435mm, while Russia and its nearby regions share a broader gauge of 1,520mm.
표준계라는 것은 이제 아시다시피 1830년대 이제 영국에서 이제 처음 기차가 도입이 됐을 때 그때 이제 1435mm를 이제 사용을 하게 되면서 그 모든 전 세계에서 두루 사용하게 됐었고요. 그 관계 같은 경우에는 그 러시아에서 도입이 됐었는데 이제 표준계에 비해서는 좀 폭이 넓기 때문에 상대적으로 좀 안정적이라는 그런 장점은 있습니다. 근데 전체적으로 봤을 때는 이제 전 세계적으로 표준계가 많이 있고요. 그다음에 이제 관계가 있다라고 보시면 될 것 같습니다.
In the past, when North Korean leader Kim Jong-il visited Russia, his train had to make a stop at the borderline for 5 to 7 hours to change bogies. Due to the difference in gauge, there is the cost and time consumed in changing bogies to run on different systems. The Korea Railroad Research Institute has developed gauge-changeable systems that can adjust wheels when the rails change between standard gauge and broad gauge.
기존의 궤관을 극복하는 방법 중에서 환적 환승이라든가 대차를 교환하는 방법은 크레인이라든가 또는 대차를 들어올리는 리프트 잭이라든가 또는 그거와 시설과 관련된 여러 가지 인프라, 토지가 필요합니다. 이러한 여러 가지 그 비용적인 측면에서 이런 궤관감인 열차는 국경을 시속 한 30km로 통과하는 그런 신기술이 되겠습니다. 그래서 기존에 이런 토지라든가 노동력 또는 기존 인프라와 관련된 그런 부분이 전혀 필요 없는 그런 기술이 되겠습니다.
The principle in gauge-changeable bogie is similar to the principle seen in a ballpoint pen. When the lock system installed on the bogie comes across the guide rail at the gauge change section, it unlocks itself so that the wheels can adjust from standard gauge to broad gauge. Not only that, the design has also considered to maximize operability and durability as well as safety.
표준계와 관계가 잘 변환이 되는 고장이 없이 잘 작동이 되도록 하는 그런 시스템 설계가 이루어졌고요. 표준계 우리나라 레일 형상과 똑같이 만들어 가지고 약 200km 이상의 주행 속도 시험을 했고요. 관계 시험을 할 때도 러시아 궤도의 폭만큼 관계로 벌린 다음에 주행 시험을 동일하게 했습니다.
In comparison with gauge-changeable system used in Europe, the system developed in Korea showed competitive edge.
장군부 질량을 40% 정도 그 질량을 경량화하고요. 그리고 또 부품 수는 절반으로 줄였습니다. 그래서 외국 제품에 비해서 저희들은 한 2,000에서 3,000km 정도 운행이 가능하고요. 또 고속으로도 운행이 가능합니다.
By putting the gauge-changeable system developed by the Institute in commercial use, it will only take a minute for the train to run on different gauge. That is, the time taken to travel from Seoul to Vladivostok will be shortened by 7 hours to 13 hours from 20 hours by using the new system. In cost competitiveness, the gauge-changeable system is more efficient, by about 2.8-fold. The newly developed gauge-changeable system is valued to have opened doors for Trans-Eurasia Railway travel. However, there are hurdles to overcome before it can be put into commercial use.
이 궤강가변 시스템은 그런 지역을 좀 더 빠르고 안전하게 운행이 가능한 그런 통합 물류 체계, 통합 운송 체계를 구축함으로써 그 지역 통합을 가속화하는 데 상당히 큰 의미가 있다고 볼 수 있겠습니다. 주행 시험이라든가 궤강가변 변경 시험을 위해서는 양자 간 협력뿐만 아니라 동북아 영내 국가 간의 다자 간 협력을 통해서 이러한 시스템이 실제로 운행이 되도록 이런 앞으로의 협력 메커니즘을 마련할 필요가 있습니다.
Gauge-changeable bogie developed by the Korea Railroad Research Institute has opened doors for Eurasia Railway, traveling through Russia and Europe. It will also provide new opportunities for international relations and global distribution networks through the Silk Road of the 21st century.
There are many options and factors to consider every time you buy a new smartphone. And one of these factors, which is very much in focus right now, is your phone's unlocking system. An unlocking system is what guards the entrance or the interface to your smartphone. And these systems are now in a constant state of evolution in order to protect your personal information and to guarantee your personal privacy.
Smartphone unlocking is the gate that protects smartphones from hacking and invasion of privacy. The smartphone unlocking method is evolving more simply and more safely. As smartphones with new security functions are being launched one after another lately, early adopters are increasingly visiting mobile phone stores. The existing smartphone locking methods mainly use passwords or pattern locks.
네, 지금 제가 사용하고 있는 휴대폰 잠금 기능은 패턴 락입니다. 패턴 락이 좀 단순해서 보통 유출이 쉽게 될 수 있긴 한데.
In fact, there were 1.23 million incidents of lost or stolen smartphones just last year. Losses stemming from losing smartphones don't just end at losing the money spent on the handsets.
지금의 스마트폰도 이미 상당히 많은 소중한 개인정보들을 담고 있습니다. 나와 지인의 연락처나 내 개인적인 사진 혹은 이메일 같은 다양한 정보들을 담고 있습니다. 때문에 현재도 보안이 상당히 중요한 상태인데요. 사람마다 고유한 패턴을 갖고 있는 지문을 인식하거나 얼굴의 그런 특징, 이목구비의 위치나 그런 배열 같은 것들을 통해서 얼굴 인식을 하는 방식들이 또 등장을 해왔고요. 최근 들어서는 노크코드와 같이 화면을 두드리는 패턴을 통해서 새롭게 락을 해제하는 방식들이 등장을 하고 있습니다.
Last year, global spending for cybersecurity reached $111 billion. The cybersecurity market is predicted to grow 5.7% per year on average to reach $194 billion in 2023. As the perception that the current locking method is no longer safe is increasing, smartphone makers are rolling out smartphones with new security functions one after another. The iPhone 5S, launched last year, applied a fingerprint recognition sensor. But LG has recently commercialized an unlocking technology more secure than the fingerprint recognition. As if knocking on the door, the knock code unlocks the smartphone when the user knocks on the screen. Depending on the order, when the rectangular screen is knocked, The user can create various lock patterns of minimum 2 digits to maximum 8 digits.
사용자는 노크 코드를 최소 2자리에서 8자리까지 설정하실 수가 있는데요. 그 화면에 가상의 4사분면을 그리시고 자신이 설정한 노크 코드를 이런 식으로 두들기게 되면 폰이 한 번에 파워 온과 락 해제까지 돼서 홈 화면이 보이게 됩니다. 따라서 편의적인 측면하고 보안적인 측면이 갖춰진 기능이라고 보시면 되겠습니다.
Regardless of the parts being touched on the screen, based on that location, the smartphone can recognize touches in all directions. It recognizes the pattern in every size, large or small. As it uses the entire screen, the smartphone is much more secure because it can be unlocked with a limited movement, unlike the existing methods which can be easily exposed.
네 자리 숫자를 입력하는 그 비밀번호 방식의 경우에는 10,000가지의 그런 조합이 가능합니다. 하지만 노크 코드의 경우에는 86,000여 개 이상의 조합이 가능하기 때문에 좀 더 보안 수준이 높아졌다고 할 수 있겠습니다.
Then which unlocking functions can we meet in the near future? A small and medium-sized Korean firm has recently developed an iris recognition sensor for mobile phones. Even though it is small with a size of more or less than 1 centimeter in length and width, it touts an outstanding recognition function.
그 홍채 인식 카메라를 초소형화 시켰다는 그 의미는 다양한 분야에 제한되는 어떤 분야가 아니라 다양한 분야에 다 적용하는 것이 용이하다. 이런 의미도 될 수 있고요. 기존 홍채 인식 기술이 극복하지 못했던 여러 가지 문제들, 즉 인종별 다양한 컬러, 그 다음에 조도 문제, 위조, 그리고 고가의 장비, 이러한 문제들을 모두 극복해냈다는 겁니다.
When the user comes close to the mirror of the iris recognition sensor, the shape of the iris reflected in the mirror is entered into the sensor. Like this, after the sensor configures the user's iris, it recognizes the iris nearly in real time in just 0.3 seconds. In particular, whenever the sensor recognizes the iris reflected in the mirror, it studies its shape and updates the data on iris, so its performance gets even better.
스마트폰에 홍채 인식 기술이 적용이 된다면 지금 기존에 그 지문 인식 폰이 출시가 되었는데 아마도 잠금 해제부터 동일하게 그 파일 보안에 이르기까지, 그리고 아마 더 나아가서 모바일 결제 부분에서 개인 인증을 더욱더 완벽하게 보완해낼 수 있는 그런 기술적인 어떤 기여가 이루어질 것이라고 보입니다.
Going forward, biometric identification technology is likely to be the biggest battlefield of the smartphone unlocking competition. There will come a day in the not too distant future when smartphones are unlocked by just wearing them.
네, 그리고 지금 상당히 이슈가 되고 있는 웨어러블과 결합이 된다면 스마트폰의 잠금 해제 방식도 많이 달라질 것이라고 예상을 합니다. 예를 들어서 가까이 착용하고 있는 스마트폰이 생체 신호를 이용을 해서 잠금 해제를 하고 사용자를 인증을 한다면 가까이에 들고 있는 스마트폰에서는 굳이 잠금 해제를 하지 않아도 될 것이라고 예상을 하고 있습니다.
Amid the growing cybersecurity market, the smartphone unlocking technology will evolve to protect personal information.
North Korea recently held its Supreme People's Assembly, the process via which that state emplaces or replaces its top leaders. It was no surprise that Kim Jong-un kept his job, but North Korean watchers were keeping a especially close eye on the assembly this year, as it's the first to take place since the execution of Jang Sung-taek, the man widely seen as the number 2 in the regime. Jang now appears to have been replaced by Taeho as the second most powerful figure in Pyongyang behind Kim himself. So what does all this mean? Well, the key takeaway would appear to be that Pyongyang has yet again chosen stability over change.
The first session of North Korea's 13th Supreme People's Assembly opened in Pyongyang last week with a widely expected announcement that Kim Jong-un was reaffirmed as first chairman of the powerful National Defense Commission. But the rubber stamp parliament, the first under the leadership of the youngest Kim, wrapped up the session with somewhat surprising power shift results in general, hinting the government has chosen stability over drastic changes.
전체적으로 이제 변화보다는 안전을 깨한 것이 아닌가 이렇게 보여지고 있고, 또 하나 이제 이번에 제1회의를 통해 가지고 김정은 체제의 이제 어떤 마무리로 들어갔습니다. 그래서 또 장성택 숙청 이후에 다소 좀 이렇게 흩어질 수 있는 북한의 어떤 통치 체제를 아주 다잡는 그런 회의였다고 보고요.
85-year-old Kim Young-nam, who was widely expected to resign as president of the Supreme People's Assembly Presidium, boasted his political will to serve for his country during the session by delivering a speech reconfirming his young leader's grip on power. Park Bong-ju also surprisingly retained his seat as premier of the country's cabinet. Before the session opened, there had been speculations that Park could be sacked to take responsibility for the failed economic reform plans.
김영남이 대외적으로 북한의 어떤 그런 얼굴로서 계속 이제 활용을 하는 것으로 보여지고 있고요. 내각 총리도 유임됐는데 이 부분은 이제 아무래도 북한이 작년까지 여러 가지 많은 경제 계획을 세웠습니다. 또 새로운 어떤 경제 계획 조치도 지금 이제 시행 중이고요. 뭐 그런 차원에서 어떤 결과를 가지고 지금 보기 위해 가지고 경제적인 어떤 그런 좀 성과를 좀 책임 있게 달성하게끔 하기 위해 가지고 유임시킨 것이 아닌가.
Kim Jong-un, who is in his third year in power, also appointed his stalwarts at important positions in efforts to control his country through his centralized leadership. In particular, Choi Ryong-hae, director of the General Political Bureau of the Korean People's Army, was promoted as one of 3 vice chairmen of the National Defense Commission, replacing Chang Song-taek, who was executed on the charge of treason in December last year.
최룡해는 2013년에는 김정은의 공개활동에 가장 많이 수행한 김정은의 최측근 인물입니다. 그런 그가 국방위원회에서 군부 원로인 김영춘이 물러나게 됨에 따라, 그리고 그가 부위원장들 중에서도 제일 먼저 호명됨에 따라 군부에 대한 그의 위상이 보다 높아졌다라고 평가할 수 있습니다.
The rubber stamp parliament also elected Chang Jong-nam, another rising star and close aide to the youngest Kim, as a new National Defense Commission member, along with Cho Chun-yong, another new member.
김정은 집권 초기에는 특히 군부를 중심으로 철저한 인물 검증과 세대 교체 작업이 활발하게 진행이 되었는데, 이번 최고인민회의 회의를 계기로 국가기구에서도 인물에 대한 검증과 김정은의 측근 배치 그리고 세대 교체 작업이 함께 추진되었다고 볼 수 있습니다.
Surprisingly, Ri Soo-young, former ambassador to Switzerland who was rumored to be purged because of his close ties to Chang Song-taek, was named as the country's new foreign minister. Ri used to take care of Kim Jong-un during his time studying in Switzerland and reportedly has extensive experience of managing foreign capital and Kim Jong-il's slush funds.
리 수용은 과거 네덜란드 주재 대사도 역임했고 귀국 후에는 하병투자위원장도 맡은 인물입니다. 유럽과 해외 투자에 밝은 리 수용이 외무상직에 임명됨으로써 향후 북한의 대유럽 외교와 실리주의적인 경제 외교가 보다 강화될 것으로 예상됩니다.
Contrary to Ri's fortune, some top officials close to Chang seem to have been removed from key posts. Kim Geun-hye, Chang's wife and the young leader's aunt, didn't attend the first meeting of the parliament, suggesting she failed to be re-elected as a deputy for the parliament.
이번 최고인민회의 회의에도 김경희가 불참함으로써 앞으로도 그가 공식석상의 모습을 드러내지 않을 가능성이 매우 높아졌습니다. 김경희는 장성택 처형의 충격뿐만 아니라 그의 건강 이상으로 인해 작년 9월부터 공식석상의 모습을 드러내지 않았고, 앞으로도 건강 문제 때문에도 사실상 정계 은퇴를 한 것으로 그렇게 볼 수 있습니다.
The latest political changes in North Korea indicate that the totalitarian state's young heir has grown quickly to become a charismatic leader who is now nearly in full charge. Meanwhile, the parliament's first session ended without any major policy announcements.
김정은 시대에 들어와가지고 정책적인 방향은 이미 작년까지 이제 순차적으로 이루어져 왔습니다. 그렇기 때문에 뭐 최고인민회의를 통해 가지고 새롭게 내세울 수 있는 정책은 없는 것이죠. 정책이나 계획은 어느 정도 완비된 거로 보여지고 있고 구체적인 성과가 나와야 되는데 그 부분에서 예를 들어서 기대에 미치지 못하게 되면은 지금 이제 뭐 표면적으로 김정은의 정권이 안정화되어 있는 것처럼 보이지만은 그러나 역시 그 성과로서 또 북한 주민들의 지지를 이끌어내야 되기 때문에 그 부분이 아마 김정은 정권의 어떤 안정성 여부에 있어 가지고 중요한 변수로 작용할 걸로 보여집니다.
The country is believed to have nearly completed a reshuffle of top officials and internal organizations through the first session of the country's highest legislative body. That could be an indication that it may make efforts to improve relations with the outside world.
아마 단기적으로는 이제 육자 회담 재개를 둘러싼 관련 국가들의 움직임이 좀 빨라지지 않을까. 그렇게 되면은 결국 북한도 육자 회담 테이블에 나와 가지고 뭔가 좀 국제 사회를 향한 어떤 접근을 할 거로 보여집니다.
The risk for a possible fourth nuclear test has increased after Pyongyang has lately issued a threat of another nuclear test in a new form.
북한은 남한에 대해서 유화 정책으로 전환할 가능성이 높습니다. 그러나 박근혜 대통령의 독일 드레스덴 선언에 대해 북한을 흡수 통일하기 위한 그런 구상이라고 평가하고 강력하게 반발하고 있기 때문에 남북 대화가 시작된다 하더라도 순탄하게만 진행될 가능성은 낮습니다.
With the parliamentary session over without any drastic changes to personnel and organization, the international community will now wait and see what kind of military and verbal threats Pyongyang may issue.
And that's all we have time for on Bizline this week. But do join us again next week. We'll be asking the question, how big a commercial effect can a star unleash? Of course, I'm not talking about a star in the sky, I'm talking about stars on screen. How important is star endorsements for consumer marketing? We'll find out next time. But that's it for now. I'm Andrew Salmon. This was Bizline. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.